Good evening, everybody, for Wednesday, August the 24th, 2011. This is episode 2 of A Book and a Martini. I just recorded one on Natural Order by Brian Francis, but this one is on Wayne Johnston's new book, A World Elsewhere. Fascinating book. I can honestly say I just finished it yesterday morning, and I talked to Wayne yesterday afternoon about it. I can honestly say that you're either going to love this book or you're just going to bloody hate it. Um, I think it's more likely you'll love it, which is why I'm recording this review. And by the way, if you'd like to see the print version of the review, in a couple of weeks from the time I'm recording this, it'll be appearing in winnipegreview.com. And on the web page, I'll have that in print in about 3 months. winnipegreview.com gets first run. This is just my general commentary on the book. And as I said, this is a book and a martini. This is the martini. Love it or hate it. Here's the thing. I love Martin Amis. Um, Martin is probably my favorite author. I haven't loved all of his books, but the thing is, with Amos, as with Wayne Johnson, is that the writing is like firecrackers, and there's just these audacious chances taken with sentence structure, and in Wayne Johnson's case, with puns. Amos is also huge on puns. And by the time you finish all this piece by piece enjoyment, when you're done the book, did you love the book? I think I loved it. I do. Um, I know that it was a page turner that when I had to put it down, I was really waiting to pick it up. Plot basically is, really in a nutshell, it's like a combination of two great movies. It's like a combination of Strangers on a Train and Citizen Kane. Um, Van, uh, Van, Van Van der Leyden, whose name you may recognize from Edith Wharton's The Age of Innocence. Edith Wharton, by the by, makes a cameo appearance in World Elsewhere along with Henry James. It's set in the 1890s, early 1900s, by the by. But the Van der Leydens were the family in The Age of Innocence who were based off the Vanderbilts. In a sense, this whole story is based off the life of George Vanderbilt, who built Biltmore, this outlandish Xanadu-like house in North Carolina, where George Vanderbilt built Biltmore. I've used the word built an awful lot, haven't I? Anyway, Van goes to Princeton in the 1890s, and there he meets Landish Druken. Even more than meets him, he goes out of his way to meet Landish Druken. Landish is the son of a Newfoundland sealing captain. Wayne Johnson is from Newfoundland, by the way, and is sent to Princeton on the proviso that Landish kind of gets this education thing out of his system, and then comes back and takes over the Gilbert, Captain Druken's sealing vessel. He doesn't. Um, Landish returns to Newfoundland to St. John's in shame for having cheated. I don't want to say more than that um, on plagiarism charges. And because of Captain Druken's draconian ways, a orphan has appeared whose dad was on Captain Druken's crew and was allowed to drift off on an ice floe. Landish adopts Deacon, the boy, as his own, and they live in absolute poverty until, in desperation, they go to live with Van at Vanderland. I didn't know, by the by, until I was doing a little research for my interview with the author Wayne Johnston, that Vanderland, I gather, is current slang for also Hotel California place, an imaginary place that is wonderful and yet entraps you. If you're going to like a world elsewhere, I strongly suggest that you have a liking for puns. As Amos loves puns, and his friends Christopher Hitchens and Solomon Rushdie love puns. If you love puns, man, are there are some classics. One sec. Got a little passage I want to read from you. When Landish and Van were at Princeton, they wrote a musical called Nuts to You. I read. It began with a corpulent character named Stilton who was at work on an Epicurean poem called Paradise Lost. Stilton, around whom everyone holds their nose, tells the audience that his purpose is to justify the weight of man to God. The characters were all major English poets and were all portrayed as corpulent with enormous bellies and backsides. Alfred Lord Tennyson became well-fed lard venison. Coleridge and Wordsworth were the hybrid Cramuel Curdsworth. Shelley, groaning and clutching his belly, spent the entire play writing Ode to the Worst Wind. A rotund, burstingly buxom Mary Shelley was carried on stage by Frankenstein, a character of Rudyard Kipling, Rhubarb Nibbling, nibbled on shoots of rhubarb and every so often roared, "My gun comes up like thunder on the bed where Manda lays." Ne'er hard unmanly Hopkins danced about, lisp singing, "It seems I've sprung rhythm." The play stirred enough of the audience to protest, especially the professors, who shouted enough and too much. Exactly. Landish wants to be a writer, and he writes every night. He's very diligent about it, but every night he burns what he writes. Because what he wants to write, you find this out late on, but I don't think it hurts appreciation of the novel. What he wants to write about is the history of the Druken family from which he has been exiled. Um, the relationship between Landish and Deacon is beautiful, the father and son relationship. When I asked Wayne Johnston about why all the puns, and he said that this is how Landish explains the world to Deacon. The mists of time, the murk, the mists of time being where babies come from, and the murk being where we descend, or ascend possibly, when we die. That part of it, of a world elsewhere, is all completely beautiful and well worth reading. And in all truth, I wouldn't be reviewing this book if I didn't think it was worth reading. As I say, if you're an Amos fan, you'll be a fan of Wayne Johnston. But regarding the book that Landish wants to write about the Drukens and is unable to complete, this passage, when Captain Druken dies, he leaves Landish this hat made of the pelts of white seal pups. And Landish thinks about his dad. He wouldn't have renounced his father's fortune, though he knew it to have been immorally acquired. He wouldn't have scuttled the Gilbert. He would have sold it to another sealing skipper or some wealthy merchant, someone who had provoked almost as much dark talk as his father had. He would have accepted his inheritance with a sincere intention of doing something more worthwhile with it than simply enlarging it by any means for which he could escape all blame. He would have convinced himself that even tended by a Druken, a foul tree need not blossom forth in a foul manner. Would that have made him a better man than Abram Druken, or merely an opportunistic hypocrite? It might be that the answer to such questions lay nowhere but in his book. It takes a very long time, a very, very, very long time for him to write that book. Fascinating novel. You can pick up a copy through the Buy the Book store, available on my website, buythebookreviews.com. Throw a few shekels my way. Um, I truly appreciate your comments. I'm glad that so many of you are enjoying these video reviews. If you have any suggestions, I'm happy to hear them. Cornell's watching over my shoulder. And for those of us who work the late shift, good night, everybody.